Welcome to ECTV 40's Inspiring the Flock. I'm Ainsley Thimes, a first-year student studying psychology and Spanish.
Hi, I'm Lucas Cunningham, and I'm currently a first-year student studying finance.
The goal of our talk show is to empower students through topics that allow them to realize their full potential. Our topic basis will be student-driven, giving you the opportunity to share your stories with us.
Inspiring the Flock is about making students and the local community feel at home, and know that you're never alone. When we fly together, nothing can take us down.
Our quote of the day is, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change."
And with that quote by Wayne Dyer, our topic for the day is keeping it in perspective. The definition of perspective, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a particular attitude toward or a way of regarding something, sort of like a point of view. So, based off Wayne Dyer, I also believe it is an ongoing process of wanting to change the way you look at something. And, changing your perspective can be difficult. And I still remember the first time I heard about you, actually. It was at open house, and they said, who traveled the farthest to get here? And I think it was 21 hours, right?
Yeah,
21 hours from Nebraska. And you mentioned a little bit about that sort of difficulty of changing your perspective and knowing that going to E-Town was going to offer so many opportunities. Can you share a little bit about that?
Right. I worked so hard to have this opportunity for myself. I wanted to leave Nebraska, but as soon as I was getting ready to leave the weeks leading up, I was having a really hard time with this idea of leaving home and what I was comfortable with. And so I remember driving around with one of my friends, and she just helped really put things in perspective for me, just saying that you worked so hard for this. Why are you scared now? Like, just be the Ainsley that we know, and you have the option of going to college and not doing anything, or you can do everything. So I remember being on the plane, and I wanted to make the conscious decision to just make everything that, about college just as great as I thought it could be.
Yeah, now I know the decision's already been made, and we don't know what the outcomes will be, but do you feel it was the right one?
I think
right
so.
Now.
Yeah.
That's right. And sometimes it forces you to step out against the crowd and sort of challenge your inner instinct.
Yeah.
But I believe that's when you can find the real beauty.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, the other day you were telling me about how you went home to visit your friend.
Yeah, that's right. 2 weeks ago, my best friend, he graduated boot camp. And, the Marine boot camp, not many can even qualify to get there. And then the percent that actually graduate is it's crazy. It's really low. So he gave me a call and he's like, Lucas, do you want to hang out back home? And I said, you know what? Yeah. And he was like, I feel so accomplished. I feel like what I've accomplished is just amazing because the opportunities with my career, the benefits that I'm going to receive, it's just a learning lesson all around. And then whenever we hung out, we were on our way to lunch and he said, Luke, I just, I don't know if it feels the same. Now I've gotten back home and it's literally all the same. And people say, oh, you're a Marine. And he said, it just doesn't, did I really accomplish something great? And I said, did you change your perspective? And we pulled over for gas, he got out and we continued the conversation. And I was like, look at it from my point of view. I'm still in college here and I see you and you're moving on, you're making amazing, great lengths, great steps towards your future. And I said, just look at it from my point of view. And he's like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And it really does speak great lengths to me. And when we got in the truck, he said, for the next couple minutes, it really did work. He was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing thing. There's so much ahead of me. And then he said a few minutes later, he came back to that unrest, that feeling. And I told him that, those minutes turn into hours and those hours turn into days. And soon after, it becomes a habit that you change your perspective,
Right, absolutely. And sometimes all it takes is somebody else pulling you out from that bad perspective and to just show you some clarity on the situation.
Yeah, it's each accomplishment is great in its own way, and it's just a matter of how you look at it. So I guess we made a goal up for this show that we hope that if you go out and ask a friend, a mentor, or a faculty member about how they see your situation, good or bad, and maybe that will change you to push you to change your perspective. Yeah. So with that, we are going to look at the topic more in depth.
Now we're going to blend your stories and additional research together to look at perspective on a much broader scale.
Our student story for the day is from a first-year student.
I worked at a summer camp this past summer, and each day brought its own stressors and annoyances. Each day I came home telling myself I couldn't do another week with these unruly kids and that I was just wasting my time. I was complaining about these kids and my job one day to my grandmother, and as I started another rant, she stopped me and said, but do you make them smile? Do you make them happy? Do you make them laugh? Do you guide them through new experiences each day? I responded with a yes, and I realized that no matter how stressful working with 40 children was, I was always impacting their lives. With this new perspective, I gathered my strength for the rest of the summer and made sure to be a means of guidance and happiness for these children's lives. And yes, there were still some very hard days, but at the end of the summer, I felt like I really accomplished something, not only for these kids, but for myself too.
And you know what's crazy about that? I picked out this quote there. Each day I came home telling myself I couldn't do another week. And it's just this sort of trap you get in, and it's just this negative language that just gets riled up in your head, and you just keep thinking you can't do something. But what I really liked was how she just kept going through it. She stuck through it, and then eventually it was the conversation she had with her grandmother that really changed the way she looked at it.
Right, it has to be choice. It has to be something you internalize, like I always say internalized strength. And you just have to find the positive in it and just decide to keep going, no matter how hard it can get.
Yeah, and that feeling at the end of the summer when she finally accomplished it was amazing. Thank you for that story, by the way. So a big thing here at college is you got to sort of change your perspective. And a lot of college students think, is it really worth the money? Is it worth the money? And let's first look at what you learn in college. According to the Odyssey Online, you learn a variety of things, from creating your own happiness. This is the first time you're away from your family. I know in my point of view, I can actually leave. I can go home and I'll be back in a day. In your point of view, you can't do that. You can't just travel. So how has that adjustment been? Sort of being away from family and creating your own self.
Right, it's been difficult, but again, like I said earlier, just relying on your friends around you to help put things back into perspectives really helps.
Yeah, and have you finally realized how much you actually care about your future?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's one thing that I think students get caught up in is that they don't think they can do things, but what's crazy is every day you wake up, it's a choice to stay here. The Elizabethtown faculty, of course, we're all welcoming, and everybody's all welcoming, but they're not making you stay here. And when you make that decision to go to your next class, to wake up in the morning, that is a really big push. And just changing your perspective that way is a major thing. And I want to touch on a little bit about, according to Inspire Me Today, there are 6 ways to keep life in perspective. And I think a big thing is nothing has an inherent meaning. So I know you had something about sort of changing your, I guess it was understanding the gray area, right?
Right. So I was thinking, how can I apply this to students on the topic of perspective? So a few weeks ago, all of us were registering for classes, and I know that can be a really stressful time, especially if you get stuck in a class that you have to take, but you don't necessarily want to take. But if you go into that class with a bad mindset, those lectures are eventually going to chip away at your semester and eventually at your college experience in its entirety. So I think just picking something at the beginning of the semester that you can look forward to as your biggest takeaway from the class can really help that. So whether that's learning grit or learning patience or learning the fact that you just don't like the course material in general can be really powerful to do. And noticing that notice all or nothing thinking. Like I say, that the class isn't going to be all great and the class isn't going to be all bad, that there is some gray area in between. And the gray area, I know a lot of people usually get frustrated with, but it can actually be like a really powerful thing, just noticing that something isn't always one way or the other.
Yeah, and one thing for Elizabethtown students and even the local community, if you ever feel like you are sort of struggling with something, or you know when things are rough, taking a walk out to Lake Pasita is a great thing, especially right when the night ends. It's an amazing view. So what I really liked that you spoke about was patience. And it's really it's all about stepping outside your major. And conformity kills creativity, individuality. And I think when somebody gets so set on, in your place, it's psychology, right? Psychology major, and in finance, is taking these other classes that are in like the theater, the art and all that. And we just feel like, we can't do that because not all the other business majors are doing that. But it's stepping outside the box where you realize that you are unique, you're one of a kind, and society can be a real pusher of this. I don't know what experiences you've had with that, even in high school,
Right, I think it's just zoning in on the person that you can see yourself becoming versus zoning out of just the college education in its entirety. So not going into those classes, not approaching college with just a very lax way of thinking.
Yeah, and how much, for me, it's a huge thing to just have positive reinforcement, because you soon become what you think about. And if you keep thinking negative, you're going to sort of express that sort of negative feelings.
Absolutely.
So what methods do you usually use? Like what do you usually say to yourself whenever you wake up in the morning and you're feeling a little off?
Well, I just, again, reaffirm to myself that even if I'm feeling kind of off, that there is a lot of power in the gray area, even if I'm not feeling totally great, totally right, but I'm learning something throughout the day. And whether it's going to be a super great day, everything's going to reach back to an equilibrium and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and something you were speaking about me earlier is like that sense of gratitude,
Right.
Which can really take you a long way. And I know it's focusing on the things you can control, and it's the present, not the past, you know?
Absolutely.
So that's right. So some thoughts to leave with you on the topic of perspective.
All right. I was thinking just how powerful it can be when you decide to change your mindset and just really put things into perspective for yourself. I'm not downplaying how difficult it can be because it can be really hard.
Exactly.
But just a reminder to reach out to a faculty member, a friend, a parent, anybody to just really help you put things into perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes more than just yourself.
Absolutely.
It is a lot of work. And that's my big thing is it takes a lot of work, and it's going against your own instinct and forcing yourself to look at it from a different lens, you know? So
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, with our topic coming to close, we're going to leave you guys with some recommendations. A TED Talk, How Changing Your Story Can Change Your Life by Lori Gottlieb.
Now, I know there was something, did you have a quote from her that you?
She said, we are all unreliable narrators of our own lives. That was said pretty early on, so I encourage you guys to reach out to us because that was really interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Feel free to send in your thoughts about the TED Talk and our conversation today. We would like to give you a preview on our topic coming up, which is, Ainsley?
Staying grateful. An everyday practice, not just throughout the holidays.
That's right. You can follow us on Instagram at Inspiring the Flock, and if you would like to share your story with us to be featured on our next episode, please send it in.
Signing off for today. We hope you enjoyed the show.